if the lights go out and we're all just stumbling through with the knowledge we have, and this piece of knowledge I've just given you has stuck, and you find someone with a bulbo in their groin or their neck or their armpit, just leave it alone. Don't poke it.
Don't poke it.
History, I'd like to follow me down the rabbit hole. History, I'd like to, frankly, I want to know.
Hello, and welcome to HILF. History I'd like to fuck, where history is a party and everybody's coming. I am your host, Dawn Brody. And if you're listening to this, like right when it's released, then we're only 1 month away from HILF Live. On Wednesday, December 11th, 2024, HILF is headlining the main room of my favorite comedy club, Flappers, in Burbank, California. And man, I got some of your favorite previous guests dropping in and some trivia and prizes for you, the audience, right? So join us. Tickets are available in the show notes and on the link tree in our social media. As for today, we rejoin music supervisor Mary Ramos for part 2 of The Black Death. These are the plague stories. Now, like last time you met the self-harm cult, the flagellants, and this time, man, we got a whole new slew of interesting folks, including a feral girl named Ripa, who's discovered living alone for years in the mountains of Finland. Okay, we also discuss the best and worst medieval methods of medical treatment and prevention, and they are nasty. And then we cover some origin theories for Yersinia pestis, the bacterium behind the plague, right? Not just the fleas and the rats, but like, how the hell did they get it? Okay. And Mary and I will also continue to roll the death dice along the way. These approximate the odds for a medieval person to first get the plague and then second die of it. And Mary, she's lived and died a couple times. It's very exciting. Thanks for joining us for this dance macabre. May it remain unchallenged as the greatest horror show in human history. Let's get started.
I mean, it's kind of got to be this sound, right?
Yeah. I mean, because it feels like a marching thing. Uh-huh.
Screamo.
Now, that guy's got the mnemonic. I can just tell.
See, there's so much. This is Disturbed. There's just a whole. And surprisingly enough, there's a lot of music from Scandinavia that is that vibe.
Oh, really? Oh,
Screamo
really? Like
and,
screamy, darky.
Oh,
screamy,
yes.
darky, ragey die.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, these beautiful, like,
I love it.
pristine, like, Iceland had, just lots of them have this kind of style of music.
I love that.
It's a faction of a style of music, but you just think, what? Wait a minute. It should all be
beautiful.
feathers. You should be.
I want to feel the down of a polar bear when I listen to this music. Before we get back into our boobos, speaking of The Walking Dead, you have raised children in LA. I am raising a child in LA. Any advice?
Oh. Wow.
Is that exactly the same as like The Walking Dead? I know that living in LA is beautiful and wonderful and I love it and there's all this great, but it does kind of feel like a horror show sometimes. And I feel like you have survived. You got out of the farmhouse. You guys are in the clearing. Your children are grown. They're doing great.
Man, I wish I had good advice. I
Really?
don't.
No,
don't. It's so hard.
Give me the key.
It's so hard.
Give me the answer.
I mean, you know what? Here's the advice. As much as I try to encase them in, hermetically seal them and keep them from, harm. You can't do that. You just can't, because they find it anyways. And the kid, you kind of steer your kid towards to be, a buddy, because you think, I like his parents. His parents are cool. Oh, he's the one who says, "You want to see my dad's gun?" When they're on, when they're in kindergarten, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, and hermetically sealed isn't good, man. I mean, nothing thrives.
I know. I saw Finding Nemo. I learned that lesson. Pixar. That's how you raise them.
Go to school and get some knowledge. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, Pixar's good. Pixar's good. History helps. I told Beatrice the story of the plague on her way to school this morning.
Not.
Yes, I did.
You did not.
I said the dead bodies. I said, guess what they threw over the wall? And she was like, what? I said, dead bodies. She was like, what? And I was like, have a nice day at school, sweetheart.
Bye.
I love you.
My first grade.
See you in martial arts. And she does. She occasionally, this is not kidding, she occasionally does tell her teachers things that like she learned. We went to the Titanic exhibit in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And you get a boarding pass when you go on that tells you you're a real passenger, and you go through the whole exhibit, and then at the end of the exhibit you learn if your passenger survived or not.
Right.
And Beatrice and I survived, but our father sadly died.
Oh yeah, he's a man.
These details were lost when Beatrice went to school and told everybody that her father died. Her dad
Did you get
died.
a call?
Yeah. Yeah, I got a call. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And I had to go through it with her. I was like, why would you say that? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, what? Are you making up lies? Are you a psychopath? What? This isn't even funny. And it took me a minute to be like, oh, wait, on that.
Details.
She was 4. She was 4.
Little kids in
right.
details.
I shouldn't do this.
But don't you just love it? I swear. I swear to you just love it. You like kindergarten and first grade teachers just must get all the stories.
I know, right? And there's no context, and they're just like, okay. Well, speaking of context, we, Mary, my friend Mary, and I have been tits deep in death for an hour now, and we're about to wade through it now. So we saw the pool of death. We saw how deep it was and how wide it is, and now we're just gonna dive into the death pool, and we're gonna swim around, and we're gonna navigate freely from this place.
You put a wetsuit on. I'm like,
get it all up in you.
Ready.
You don't want to skinny dip in death. You need something nice on. You will recall from part 1 that first wave hits us in that mid-14th century, kills half the population on Earth. Then the subsequent waves come back every 6 to 10 years.
6 to 10 years.
Very different virility, and some are more tragic because they just get the kids. It's just terrible. Then, in 1666, don't think that number didn't slip people's attention, poof, the plague kind of goes away. That certainly we get well past that 6 to 10 years, right? And what this episode is going to do is we're going to talk about that, that icky gooey part where it just kept coming and going back and what we did.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to talk about when it did come back in the 1880s and what we learned about it at that point that really has informed everything we know about the fleas of the black rat, that bacteria, the Yersinia pestis, and the origin on a molecular level and a scientific modern level on actually what the fuck was this thing?
Yeah. Because
we know a lot, obviously, now, but we know less than I think you're prepared to accept. So, for context, you and I now, as we exist, we're recording this in the fall of 2024. We are, give or take, 5 years from COVID.
Yes.
Right?
Although I still carry my mask.
Yes. And that's one of the things.
I'm going to go visit old people coming up.
Exactly.
So I wear my mask everywhere.
Get your mask. And that's one of the things I want to point out is that as we talked about, the death rate is minuscule in comparison to even AIDS and even to the Spanish flu in terms of how many people it killed. And it's fair to say, we don't know the future, but where we sit now, we feel like we're through it, and we can look on it with some reflection, and you can point to a lot of things that have changed.
Yes.
That COVID changed. The way we work, the way we go to school, how we have a doctor's visit. I'm an actor, self-tapes. We're never going to go back into those casting rooms again, I don't think. Even traffic flow is different on Mondays and Fridays in LA, and it might never be back to the way it was. Think about religion and politics. I mean, we were like, boy, COVID was a big ripple. That rock left big ripples in the pond, right? So it changed everything. But lots of things happen in human history on the scale of COVID, on the scale of world wars, on the scale of natural disasters that change everything. I can point to a million places where like everything was this way and then that happened and everything was different after that. Mm-hmm. What makes the plague different is it didn't just change everything, it shattered everything. Everything was broken and was rebuilt. That is a big difference between everything changing. It was just obliterated. And my feeling is the only thing that I can imagine that could come close to what the plague did to humanity is a nuclear bomb.
Holy moly.
Because we are organic species that live and mold and flex and move with various things. Something like that. So here we go, back into the plague, and I'm going to take you by the hand to Lapland, Finland.
Lapland!
Have you been to Lapland?
I haven't, but it's on my list of things to do.
Oh, well, I hope that your experience there will be more pleasant than the one I'm about to
Oh,
describe.
good God. Oh, no. Oh, don't.
It's 1481.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things you should know about your village outside of Lapland, Florida.
It's pretty.
Florida. Finland, it's pretty. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. All those pretty little houses.
You mountain people.
Oh.
And you mountain people in the cold. Mountain people in the cold, of course, live significantly different than agrarian people down there in Europe.
Right.
These are farmers, right? The farmers in Europe, you work a ton of land, and then if you have a lot of land around you, you go, well, I'm going to grow wheat, and you're going to grow corn, and then we're going to trade, we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to do that, and that's how their society is built. For the folks up in the mountains in Lapland, Finland, they have some stuff, and they rely on one or two people from their village going down the mountain into the city down there and getting a few things they need on occasion. And then but those things they need on occasion are absolutely desperately necessary for their survival. But this is a very, very, very different way of doing stuff. Okay. And we, up here in Lapland, Finland in 1481, we have heard of the plague, even up here. We have not gotten it, though. Nobody here has gotten it or died. Some of the dudes that go down the mountain for us don't come back. That has happened always, but that seems like maybe they're going down there and dying, especially you and I know how quick you die, right? And it's starting to get like people don't want to accept trade anymore. And one of the things that is becoming abundantly clear to us up here is that if we don't trade, then we're all going to starve to death. Which means if the plague don't get us, starvation will. And we got to figure something out here. So the people of Lapland, Finland basically make an arrangement with their trading partners down below. That is essentially a medieval contactless Grubhub. They're like, how about this? We will bring our stuff down to that rock next to the tree, and then we go leave.
That's smart. That's smart.
And you come, and the people down below were like, fucking deal. Fucking deal, man. And here's what happened to the people of Lapland, Finland. The plague still came.
No.
And half of everybody died. But they did not starve to death. They continued to have enough people that went down to their fucking Grubhub spot and get their shit that the people of that mountain village survived, ultimately. Even though they got the plague and half of them died.
How did they get it?
Because even if they had never gotten the plague and that trade route had stopped, they all would have died.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Okay.
Right? Because they would have been blocked off and isolated. It would have been the same thing that would have happened to them if there had been a landslide or something that severed that line of trade. They know what happens to the people who live there. They either all die or they have to move and leave because they don't have the resources to survive.
Right. Okay, right.
So they were like, half of us die of plague still means half of us are here.
But how did they get it, though, if they didn't have contact?
God.
Okay.
No.
Jumping.
Mary, you've saved me.
Okay.
You have made what we call in the podcast business a natural segue through your organic curiosity. How? Right?
Yes. How did they get it?
Turns out that the fleas of the black rat can live in textiles for 30 to 50 days.
Oh, my God.
That solved a lot of mysteries when we fucking figured out. First, it was the fleas of the black rats, and then we figured out that fleas of black rats can travel in a spool of wool for over a month. We were like, well.
What?
Well. And everyone goes, that changes things a lot.
God.
So we're going to give you your first death roll here.
Okay.
You,
Okay.
resident of the beautiful scenic
Lapland.
Lapland. Pick a number, please, 1 through 4.
Oh, God. 4.
1.
Son of a...
You got it, girl. Pick a number 1 through 8.
I don't... 2?
It's 8. You're
Damn
dead.
it.
Yeah, fuck. You know, one of you, Falco, is still going strong, though. Your first character. Oh, damn it. I'm going to tell you now what we know in 2024. We were just in Lapland in 1491. We're going to hop quickly over here to the 21st century.
Really?
And I'm going to tell you what we know about the plague because it's fucking nuts.
Okay.
And part of the reason why we know this is because, again, it resurged in the mid-1800s in China and India, killing millions of people. But we had microscopes and we were tipping a toe over the modern era. And we figured out a lot of stuff and went, oh my God, that was what was happening to these fucking guys. Okay. So Yersinia...
Was it bats?
Exactly, no. But it is black rats, and it's really specifically black rats, the fleas of the black rat, who carry, and the black rats have to be infected with this Yersinia pestis. Where the Yersinia pestis
Or
came
at least
from,
fans of that band.
they at least have to have a T-shirt. I've heard one single. We're going to talk about where the Yersinia pestis came from. Okay, so we'll back up there. But for now, let's just say you got infected rats and the fleas on the infected rats. Something, and we'll get into this later, why the rat population moves into the human population. They've been there for a while, but they're infected, okay? Then what we know is that the black rat population has to die for the fleas to jump to people. Fleas of black rats don't like anything but black rats. Black rats are their absolute favorite. They have evolved together for tens of thousands of years, and it's their absolute favorite food. Oh my God. And these fleas on the black rats are incredibly sophisticated, have also evolved amazingly. So when a black rat gets sick, the flea has this like natural enzyme that basically shuts off its straw. So if you picture like a mosquito sucking device and it's got like chompers at the end of a long straw, so it digs in the rat, chomp, chomp, sucks the blood.
No.
Once its body is like, this blood is bad, the flea's body creates this enzyme that like clogs that tube so that the blood can't get into the flea, but it fills that tube, but it starts to get hungry. So it sucks harder and it fills that thing. And then it eventually starts, and then the rat dies. Now, the other critical thing that has to happen is all the rats are going to have to die, which actually takes a lot longer than you think because they cannibalize each other and they got babies for days. So like it takes a long time for actually all the rats to die. And the fleas are so dedicated to rats, they really don't want to jump onto anything else. So once the last rat's done, this flea with Yersinia pestis in its little sucking tube, as a last resort, jumps onto a person. Oh. It's starving, so it's sucking and digging. But its hose is still clogged because its body said, shut it down. This is poison blood, right? So it regurgitates everything that's in its tube out so that it can now suck your blood. Oh. So really, the main primary number one way you and Falco and all the people you've played and everyone we're about to meet gets plague is an infected flea, period.
Wow.
The second most likely way is you encounter someone with pneumonic plague who coughs on you.
The cough kind.
Or you're lancing your boobos with open wounds, but that's almost kind of hard to do.
But you wouldn't do that, would you?
Oh, hang on. Yeah, don't underestimate the Middle Ages, girl. Yeah, so that's crazy, right? And then through the course of studying, in the various years, we know that these similar fleas also are on gerbils, and gerbils are in various places, and that the Mongols were eating some of the ferrety type creatures that may also have had some of these fleas. We also know the fleas lived in grain. So grain shipping could have held infected fleas for 20 to 30 days, for 30 to 20, all these ingestion periods. They can live that long in these fibers of clothes. Oh. Yeah. And they won't jump onto a person until all the rats have been dead for a couple days. It's so fucking interesting, girl.
Or there's just no rat around, right?
Right.
Okay.
Which is why the crazy thing is, like, totally sounds ridiculous now, but you're like, you'd be safer if you had a couple of rats in your house than if there were no rats. In certain instances, having one family of black rats in your house was kind of great for you.
Yeah.
Wild. So
that's a great idea for
Right.
story.
Or even like you're the human version of that to like an outer space species. Like we need you to be the black rats that live in our basement. Okay. Oh yeah.
Blood bag.
Hollywood.
You're my blood bag. It got dark. I mean,
It gets dark.
it gets super dark.
It gets really dark. No, you and I, for all the
Once
things
again,
we know.
why can't we talk about cumin or cinnamon? Why can't?
Next time Dawn says, "What's your HILF?" You
Why?
say unicorns. What's your HILF? How did we develop the cute hairstyle known as the bob? I bet that has less to do. No chance, we're getting in. But this question of like, what the fuck, man, is not something that we started asking in 2024. It certainly wasn't even something we started asking in 1380 when it came back. When the plague came around with the Pope walking between his two fires and various universities in Paris and stuff, we're like, what the fuck is this? And they were like, they're like, oh, I have all the answers. Anyone who's been selling for the millennium that I have all the answers has to at least take a swing. Right. So the theories at the time, I'm going to tell you now what the medieval theories were about what this was and where it came from and what ought to be done. Okay. For treatment and prevention. Here's some of the smart stuff. They're all swinging. They have no fucking clue. We don't know about germs. We don't know nothing. But here's some of the stuff that happened to be fairly wise. Quarantine. Quarantine comes from quarter. 40 days is the idea. 40 days, your ship comes in. We don't know where you're fucking from. We're going to be hanging out there 40 days. By then, someone's going to get sick and show it, or you're all going to be dead or whatever. That's not the dumbest thing. That makes sense. The other was the Birdman suit. You saw that little hazmat suit. I'm going to show you a picture to my friend Mary. And Mary, I'd like you to describe to the listeners.
That sexy Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman movie. Remember that?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut. It looks like that, you guys. Totally like that.
Totally like that. His dick's out. No, wait, that's his hand.
No,
Never mind. What are you showing me, Dawn? But you guys might know it's like kind of a Tim Burton-y kind of mask. That beak. Long beak. You had a black cloak, usually carrying a stick. And this is the plague doctor. Okay. And that was kind of a hazmat suit, like gloves, mask. Now, they weren't trying to protect themselves from germs because they didn't know what that was. But the idea is at the end of that beak is full of like dried flowers and perfume and stuff, because even if this isn't going to keep me safe from like germs, it stinks. Y'all stink.
I'm not going to
dying. Your mom's been dead for a couple days.
That's what that nose was. I thought it was scientific. Stupid me. Because I thought, oh, they're at least staying this far away. It's because the nose goes out for how many inches or whatever. But,
a broken clock. Twice a day. They just rolled the dice and happened to help themselves out. Yeah. Wow. Here's some of the dumb stuff. They lanced and drained them buboes. Don't do that. And here's just like, if the lights go out and we're all just stumbling through with the knowledge we have, and this piece of knowledge I've just given you has stuck, and you find someone with a bulbo in their groin or their neck or their armpit, just leave it alone. Don't poke it.
Don't poke it.
Okay.
Don't lance it. Just that word.
Lancing it. Don't lance it.
I'm going to lance it.
No. Yeah. Pilgrimage. You don't need to go anywhere. They were like, well, clearly what God wants us to do is hit the road and see our friends, And they're like, no, God doesn't want that. And then the other thing was, because, everything's hard to get. This is the Middle Ages. Clothes and bedding of those who died inherited and donated immediately to the closest members of the family. It's, of course, full of them, please.
Hello, Goodwill. Hello.
Here's how the church's initial reaction, of course, as we talked about, was like, I gotta go. Also, fuck you guys.
Bye. Bye. Sanctum Dominus Dominus. Bye.
Yeah, and they got real flexible. Suddenly, the church found ways to be negotiable.
You can confess to a woman.
They were simply non-negotiable before. These elements of flexibility certainly preserved the church to whatever extent. Like, the church obviously didn't go away. We still have a pope and everything kind of maintains. So it saved the church. It's also why, in the middle of this, if you're doing the math on dates, 1517 is when Martin Luther stabs that treatise into the door. And we have the Protestant Revolution, which is like, I think you're all full of shit. And among the things I think you're bullshitting about is how much money you need, how nice your house has to be, right? Yep. So there was definitely like the idea, and historians have debated about this, but the theory is that the schism and the doubt, the ability to challenge the church, was probably impossible prior to the plague. And the plague itself, in addition to distribution of population, just actually took them down. You're wrong. You can't prove it, you know? But a lot of people who lost faith in the church never lost their personal faith. It was sort of astounding to some that it wasn't just an institutional belief that was bolstering them, and how their faith sort of transpired. We talked in part 1 about the flagellants.
Yes.
And there is a shortage of clergy, and some saints. Are you Catholic?
I was raised Catholic. Now I'm Protestant.
Fascinated. So you know all about this stuff. Well, you have a hand in either side. Some of these saints, if they're familiar to you, tell me. I was raised Lutheran. So we would sort of be like, what is a saint exactly? And they'd be like, well, it's like a little angel god. They help you out. Yeah. And the idea was, in this particular instance, that the saints function as intercessors, that they basically talk to God on your behalf, and they're in with the big guy. And they have a certain perspective and a certain experience that will make them uniquely qualified to make your prayers and your petition.
Help you find that thing you lost, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
help
exactly.
your dog, help that thing. What is their
goodness.
thing? And one of the fascinating things that happens during the waves and stuff that happens is there's grassroots saints.
Oh.
There's figures that the Pope, up until this point, the Pope is you tell me about a miracle, and then my guys come down there and they check in if it's a miracle, and then all of a sudden, there's this what are they who are they talking to the saint? And they're like, well, the people have decided this. And there were some that 200 years later, they're canonized, but they had been interceding on behalf of the faithful for centuries.
Oh.
And one of my personal favorite is Saint Roche.
Roche?
Rouche. Roche.
Okay.
He's a saint, bottom-up, grassroots guy that he was it was a 1590, and it is when the people started talking about they loved his family, was very pious. When his family died, he traveled. He was like a nomad, and he got sick, but then he miraculously got healed.
Oh.
And he lived in he had a dog in the woods.
Aww,
they
they live in the woods.
And so he gets
okay. That's my kind of saint.
So it was good. Saint Roche had a great time.
Okay.
He went from nobody to
Did he talk
saint.
to the animals like the other saint, Saint Francis?
They were
of Assisi?
close.
Okay.
But there were 14 holy helpers, they're called.
Oh.
That the people nominate to bring around. One of my favorites, Saint Agatha, gets a big boom. She had sort of been lost
female.
and forgotten. Yeah. She was a chest plate. If you can visualize her, if you're picturing the stained glass window in your church.
I thought that was Joan of Arc.
She also had a faceplate, but Agatha was less of a warrior than she protected for illnesses of the breast and the breathing and the chest. And they thought, hey, people are coughing of blood.
Oh,
we'll ask for Agatha. There was one, she in particular, her relics, her bones, the pieces of her body were in the city of Messina.
Good God.
And there was a group of people that were like, we need some of them gooey bones up in our town. Could somebody please go get Agatha's bones, because we need them right now. And the people of Messina were like, we got them bones, and them bones are keeping us safe, so no way. So a priest is like, I know exactly what to do. I'm going to go with this water to Messina. I'm going to get them bones wet. I'm going to collect the water from the bones. I'm going to bring that over, and it'll contain some of the holiness.
I'm going to do it all behind this screen so you don't see what I'm doing. Just trust me. Trust me on this.
No, he actually did it.
He did?
And he died of the plague.
Oh, shoot. Well, I could have just come to that conclusion, of course, of the bone juice, the relic juice.
It didn't work.
Nope.
Before I break, I'm going to roll the dice one more time. Okay, you've been praying to all these saints.
Yes.
You've been doing everything right. You've been dripping your water on the bones. It doesn't matter. You're going to roll the dice like everybody else.
Oh.
Pick a number 1 through 4.
4.
1 again.
No.
See, I got all
So
my
I got
dice
it.
there. That's
Son of
crazy.
a
So you got it. So now you're going to do 1 through 8.
1.
1.
Yay! So I got the kind
You
that
survived. You got the bubonic. Nobody lanced your buboes.
Nobody lanced me. Do they eventually go away? Do we know this?
The buboes do even if it's because the idea is the 18%. I think your window in there, the 18% is that they go away, but it seems that the likelihood is that it spreads to the semiseptic or to the pneumonic, and once it gets in there, then
Yeah. You're you're effed.
Yeah,
Pretty
you're
much.
fucked. You're never gonna do it.
Your S is pretty much effed.
That's exactly right. And when we come back, we're going to get into a time machine.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm going to help you out. If time travel is ever possible, we're going to get you some
I
dates.
believe it is, yes.
Dates and places you can write down in your little book to not fucking go.
Oh.
Okay. Or the window where you're like, oh, but I hear Lapland's gorgeous. I'll give you some times and regions that might be safe for you to go for a minute.
Hey there, I'm Danny Brown, host of 5 Random Questions. If you love spontaneous conversations, unexpected laughs, and a bit of heartfelt wisdom, then this is the show for you. Each week, I sit down with my special guest and ask him 5 completely random questions, generated on the spot by my random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions will be, and neither do I, so you never know where the conversation will take us. Expect a mix of humour, unexpected wisdom, and a whole lot of fun as we dive into answers that can range from the utterly hilarious to the surprisingly profound. But that's not all. At the end of each episode, my guests get to turn the tables and ask me a random question to give me a taste of my own medicine. So if you're looking for a good laugh, some unexpected wisdom, or just an entertaining chat, join me every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favourite podcast app, or online at 5randomquestions.com. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm looking forward to welcoming you to 5 Random Questions, where every question is an adventure. See you there.
Hey, before we climb back into the tombs with Mary, a moment to thank those who propagate my bacterium, my patrons. This week, the generous Hillary C. has thrown some money at us on Patreon, and she dropped in and boop, she made a donation, and then boop, she went right out again, right? She was like, I like you, but I don't want the monthly deduction and the bullshit, so just here, take the money and then leave me alone. And I dig that. Hillary. I think that's nice as hell, and it certainly does help us out. So thank you. And if you want to find a way to show the pod some love, check out the show notes for links to Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, our merch store on Redbubble, and all the other hot online places where you can.
Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow.
This is so fascinating.
I should tell you, I tried to have Melby listen to this. I was like, it's been a couple weeks. I had the research front of mind, and then I'm going to have it sit for a while, and then I'm going to try to come back. And I said, would you do me a favor and just like let me tell you the story so that it's fresh in my mind? And he was like, sure, of course, darling, I love you. And I went, you're gonna drown in your own blood. He's like, you know what? I'm so sorry. It is late, actually, and I hate this.
This is Rosa.
And I was like, oh, no, what if Mary hates this? But
No, it's fascinating.
It's beautiful, gross.
It's beautiful, gross. Well, especially since you're going to bring it around. You're going to turn it around. But also, it's just there's so flippin'. I'm surprised we're getting this much done with just 2, because there's a lot.
There's a lot. I mean, you can imagine, I total it was about 18 hours of lecture. Like, there's stuff that, of course, I was like, oh, I love that. But then I saved that for the book.
Yes.
Save that for the live show.
Okay.
But I picked out the stuff that, and there was a lot of it clearly, that had me say something out loud. Like as the research went, I was like, oh my God, and I was like, I have to share that. Or that I just was gobsmacked. Like I didn't even know anything about that.
I mean, did they implement quarantine? Because that seems...
The port cities for sure. The port cities were like, quarantine 40, then they changed it, then they made it longer. It was like 40, but we now know that the goods, if the grain and the textiles were coming off those ships and moving around, the people actually weren't the problem.
Yeah.
Because only a pneumonic form was contagious on contact.
Right.
Because keep in mind that Yersinia pestis is a bacteria. COVID's a virus.
Yeah. Oh.
Generally speaking.
Right.
For the way the human average person experiences, it doesn't really matter. But of course it matters enormously because bacteria can live for a while outside of a host.
Right.
but a virus has to be in a host to multiply. So that's math.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. So I told you I'd give you some, there are slivers of good news. If you have a time machine and you're like, I just do really want to see the Middle Ages, Dawn, and you can't scare me away from it.
My book. Did we
You
say
did.
the
It's right
title of
here.
my
I
book?
can't say. It's called. Yeah, the book. It's so beautiful, and it's so wet. Your pages are curled from poolside lounging. Mary has a book, The Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England, a handbook for the visitors to the 14th century. Do they help you out with like?
Yeah. It's got
these
a few
fucks.
things. I didn't finish it, so
All right. Let's see. I'm flipping to a random page. Oh, yeah. They got acrobats and dancers often accompany minstrels around the country. See?
I love
they
that.
would have been the choreomaniacs.
love
Would have
that.
loved these
Oh yeah,
guys.
choreomaniacs. That's another.
It's another great
sect
band.
I would have belonged to them. Sure.
Sure.
Love to
And
dance.
if the,
I love
and,
to dance.
and if the flagellants are going to do it to rhythm, that's a thin line.
Not ever.
No chance.
Ever joining them. Forget it.
Forget it.
Either version, either the
No
farting
way.
or the beating.
I don't care which comes first.
Yes.
Well, there were
But
some...
we digress.
We digress. Now, if you look at, as my absolute heartthrob crush, Dr. Dorsey Armstrong, has a lot of graphs in her lectures. That's one of the best parts.
Really?
You can listen to the audiobook version, which is also great. But if you watch her lectures, they give you lots of visuals. And if you watch a map of the slow burn of the plague, it really does look like a forest fire. It just starts in Italy and just sweeps. It goes west, up, and then into the northern Europe, the Finland, Iceland, and then into Russia. And it just ends where it started, kind of right in that Golden Horde, like Mongol area. In Iceland manages to avoid the first wave completely. Okay. And one of the piecing together was when people were like, yeah, I think it was traveling mostly by grain, because if you just went with people, it like got to Scotland after it got to, and they were like, oh, it's because of the ships. It's not because of the people. But we figured this out later. But Iceland was like safe. And they did kind of miraculously miss the first wave by 1 hour. A ship that had a plague victim on it was about to port in Iceland during the first wave and was delayed by weather. Just happenstance. And during the weather delay, the symptoms started to show. And they said, no. And so they avoided the first wave. Now, it does come Iceland gets sick later. All right. When it gets there in 1402, it comes through, it kills half everybody. But the historians agree that they're like in Finland, which had a similar deal. If they had been hit by the first wave, their civilization may have been wiped out forever.
Oh, wow.
Because there weren't enough people.
Not a lot of people.
But by the time it got there, they could still
they're all spread
maintain some of their society, some of their architecture, some of their culture with the people that were left. Right? Poland is an interesting one. We start getting our data, right? Keep in mind, we start collecting, plague data in the 1900s and the 1950s, and doctors and stuff are getting to that. And we're like, God, Poland, how was your plague experience? And Poland was like, great, we didn't really get it. And I was like, wow, fuck, really? And they're like, yeah, no, it was pretty good here, actually. And I was like, that's nuts. So people start pondering, why did Poland not get it? And so the theory is that maybe they had more cats. Because they got a lot of cats in Poland, and they were like, is that it? Is that something you could just had cats and you could have avoided the plague? Like, I didn't know that. I'm like, no, it's probably because it's so rural, it's so spread out. They didn't have a lot of big cities, so it was all wooded. And they're like, yeah, there are other places, real wooded, real rural, they got the plague. It's fucking weird. And then somebody was like, well, we are asking communists for their data.
Right. That was the first thing that came to mind. I was like,
exactly.
they were never going to tell you.
Exactly.
No, we never had it. What are you talking about? I don't know.
We don't have any gays.
We don't have
We never had
any
any
of it,
plague.
no.
We don't have any revolutions. Everyone's doing great here. Thanks for asking.
Bye.
Yeah. So we think maybe that was not so much of a discrepancy of situation on the list.
Don't include that in the answers.
Exactly. Now, there's two other cities I find very, very fascinating. Milan and Nuremberg. Both had significantly lower death rates than anywhere else. Both are cities, big cities with lots of people. Milan isn't a port city, but again, we can compare it to a lot of other places and be like, they got it. Why didn't they? The mortality rate in Milan was only 15%. Not 50, 60 even. I mean, 30, you thought you were doing great. if only 30% of your population died, and only 15% in Milan generally. And so we scrutinize. We go in there, what was the deal with Milan? Why was their death rate so low? And it turns out it's because it was governed by a despot, this Visconti, who basically brutally shut down fucking Milan, man. No visitors. No one moves around. If someone is sick and their family is sick, we board up their house and burn it down with them inside.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And you get 15% mortality rate. And so a part of you as a historian is like, fuck, I don't want to learn any lessons from that. I don't like that lesson, right? But then you go over to Nuremberg, which had only a 10% mortality rate, even lower than Milan. And you go, well, why was that place so much better? Well, because they had very high standards of public health. They had paved streets, which were fairly unusual, and those paved streets were regularly cleaned and swept of garbage. They had a law that you had to bag and dispose of your own garbage, which is like, we don't got bags. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna find a bag? You know what I mean? In the Middle Ages, it's up to you. You gotta find a bag and you gotta get rid of all your own garbage. They had bathhouses, big public bathhouses, and they encouraged everyone to use them.
They had those.
Right?
Yeah.
And they were not, a lot of other places had them, but it was like code for get fucked in here.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, I mean, you can get fucked in here if you really want to, but this is for bathing. We're actually into that. Right?
Yeah.
And dead people's bedding and clothes were burned and not inherited.
Oh. Smart.
So if we are looking for lessons, turns out that there is an alternative to just locking people in their homes and burning them alive, and you actually get better results. Who knows?
Makes me think of Singapore. Remember, during SARS, and Singapore didn't have,
Right.
And it just makes me think about that. I've never been to Singapore, but didn't they like cane some kid for spitting gum on a?
Yeah. That was I remember that. It was.
This can be edited, by the way.
No,
this is really me just talking right out of my butt.
It's important. No, it's cool because I mean
I don't have facts.
No, this is important because these are the lessons we're trying to learn, man. And the question that we still ask is, if you want something out of your population, there's several ways to do it, and one of them is brutal. Lockdown, stop, don't allow it. And another is mitigation and sanitation. And they're not both necessarily the right way either way. You know what I mean? But some work better than others. And the problem is when you see results, what do? Is it worth it?
Double down. You double down.
Exactly. You put everybody. There was actually a place, I remember I was in Scotland several years ago, and there were these new buildings going up in like big, Edinburgh, outside Edinburgh, and they are digging up a foundation, and they found a city, like roofs of houses and a place they didn't even know was there. And the government was like, well, yes, on occasion, we would just, there'd be a town that had the plague, and so they would board everybody up and bury the town.
Oh, bury them alive? Board them all. Oh, wow. That's heavy.
That's one way to do it.
That's heavy.
And there's also like they start to build these like, because it's hundreds of years now. We're doing this for centuries, and it comes and it goes. And so we're like, how about this? Okay, we're gonna lance your bubo. You're welcome. We're gonna give you some leeches. That's on us. We don't mind.
Free.
Yeah. And there's these places called Lazar houses. The idea is Lazarus, who is the person in the Bible, comes back to life. And it was for nice. If you have some money, you gotta get your sick person out of there. It wasn't like they're gonna have a long convalescence, right? You're either gonna die in the next couple of days or you're not. But we kind of take care of you here. We keep you comfortable. We at least do whatever the loosey-goosey stuff we think we can do here. Versus the pest house. I mean, you can just hear it in the language. The Lazarus house, the idea is you're coming back to life. The pest house is get these vermin out of our city.
Not dead yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross. Nobody wants to. And a lot of people would hide their sick relatives because it was better than having them go to these horrible, God, right?
How awful.
Terrible.
Around what time was this? Around what year?
It would have happened sort of as the various waves would come, but it probably took them, if the first wave ended in 1353 and the last wave ended in 1666, we're talking around the 15 to 1600s, come and go here and there. It worked, it didn't work. The people who worked there, a lot of turnover.
Right,
I
I'm
would
sure.
think in your staff.
I'm sure.
Here's one of my
Job
favorite
opening.
places. Yeah. Hey, ding, 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 ding. We just ring a bell outside and you can line up for the job. This is one of my favorite plague stories. So this one, it starts off with this family in the Burbank Mountains, okay? And the idea is, similar. People are getting sick, and then we get rid of their clothes, and then and they're starting to realize that like the contagion seems to be in a spot. And so instead of being like, I got to get out of here, they're like, come on, everybody, we're all getting out of here. Which we know,
No.
Everybody get your textiles, get your grain, and come with me.
Maybe bring some of those rats and
Yeah. Don't
Cats
forget
and-
grandma's
Yeah.
hair that you have rolled up in a pillowcase for old time's sake. Make sure you bring that up with us. Yeah. So they
because
all
you
go,
know that was a thing.
right?
You know it was.
No, it was. And they're in, and they go up to the mountain, and then they die along the way, and they die along the way, and they get up there, and then who knows, right? Flash forward. A group of people, similar, we're trying to escape the plague, get up to this area, and they find a lone girl. She's feral. She has been living with the animals with no other people for a time indeterminate. Okay? Her name is Repa the Wild Bird, is what they name her. She is eventually re-domesticated.
Sorry, I'm just getting that picture. So.
Repa.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
love
this
it.
lone girl. She's probably around 7 years old.
Okay, I love it.
We don't know how long. She doesn't have language. She's wild.
Okay.
They re-domesticate her.
I saw that movie. Jodie Foster
marries.
played her.
Tay and the Wind. Yes, you
Sorry,
know
Jodie.
exactly.
But you know, I
Jodie,
mean.
you know us. So she's re-domesticated, and she still today, if you go into the Burbank Mountains, you will find the Repa family estate, because one of the things that happened to Repa, the feral girl, is what happened to a lot of people during the plague. They inherited everything.
Oh,
Every member of every family for her entire village, she got everything. And she became a bit of a catch. Well, also, she's crazy. She bites your dick off. She's great.
she was wild. She was feral.
Wild,
Like
yeah.
wild in a feral way.
Wild in a feral way, and this was nuts, man, right? I mean, this is one of those foundational things that the plague really started to shake. Dr. Dorsey Armstrong says several times in the lecture series, the plague is obviously awful. Nobody would ever, you've heard me. But for the people who survived, they were all of them, to a person, much better off, infinitely better off than they were before.
Oh,
And some of it became like burdens of inheritance. I mean, it was like so much has come to you. I don't even know how to take care of it all. Like, you've given me more land than I have more animals than I have land. I mean, people were starting to, it was nuts, right? And so it like created this whole new thing. For another group of people, however, it exasperated a situation that had already been terribly tragic for them. And that is the Jewish population. So if you remember way back in part 1, I talked about how the plague arrives in Europe and we have these 3-tiered system, right? And how it's all been going fairly well. This is what has sort of happened since there was this like big population boom that started in like 1000. It was like good global warming, where all of a sudden all the crops were doing great and everyone was surviving as long as possible and everyone's eating, and we were like population,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom.
good global warming.
Good global
Boom,
warming.
chicka, what?
And it starts to create like competition for the land, which isn't great, but it starts to kind of shift all this stuff. And once there became a land crunch, more people than there was stuff, tribalism really takes root fast. Jews and Muslims and Christians were really getting along. This is before the Crusades. They often, the three of them, occupied the same holy lands, the same Old
They
Testament.
literally would walk into a bar together.
They literally would, often did, arm in arm. Everybody's getting along, right? But when there was a land crunch after this population boom, is the first time, really, in this area of the world, in this history, that people started to look askance at who the fuck are you? Why do you have so much? If you get some, I won't have enough. Scarcity, right? And it is then really in like that early time that the Jews become a target. Why should they get anything? So land is confiscated and they are restricted by the church who runs everything. We already talked about those who pray, right? They say the Jews are clearly not Christians. This is a line we now can draw very clearly. They had to live in ghettos, they had to live in separate areas, and they were not allowed to do certain jobs, and their land was confiscated. And it wasn't just that they weren't allowed to do certain jobs. In Italy and in France and in England and in various other places, the Jewish population was actually forced to do one job, which was money lending. Because, and this is a wild concept, it's a sin in the Bible to charge interest on a loan. Okay? But you gotta borrow money, am I right?
Yeah.
So when you were a Christian king, right? So if you're a Christian part of the nobility, those who fight, or you are in the clergy, those who pray, and you need a loan, and you need it to be kind of mutually beneficial to the person who has the money that you need so badly, and you don't know how to convince them to loan it to you. It's called interest, man. We got to make an arrangement, but that's a sin. I need to get someone who can do it for us. So they would force the Jews to be the moneylenders in those scenarios. It also was a problem because the Jews then had to, it was sort of like prostitution. They were then forced to collect, all the worst things that came with money lending, which further ostracized them and further demonized them from the population. And it was, even in England at one point, king exiles all the Jews and then literally forces them to come back to bank for him.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. This is the setting as the plague arrives.
Okay.
And so one of the first thing that happens is it's perceived, historians actually can't confirm if it was true or not, but it's perceived that the Jews are getting the plague in lower numbers in the early days, which they may have been because they were walled off, because they were living in isolated segments of the population, and also various traditions, including Sabbath, require cleaning every crumb. And removing all food. So there actually may have been some instances in which they weren't getting it. They still got it, the same way as everybody else. But there was like already ostracizing, already blaming, already looking for a scapegoat. Certainly the church was like, somebody's got to be fucking up. How about them, right? Oh, wow. And the reaction is nuts. You've heard of the pogroms, which is the first like organized, systematic persecution of Jews starts during the plague as a reaction to the plague. In particular, this pinpoint is they kidnap this guy and they torture him into confessing. And it's super specific because some of this stuff is what's on 8chan today. This guy, through torture, confesses that not only did the Jews bring the plague, they did it on purpose. It was an orchestrated thing. All the Jews agreed to do it. Okay, so that took however many weeks of burning and torturing. Then how? Well, we did it through the wells. We poisoned the wells. Poison the wells. How did you poison the well? With poison from a basilisk. Oh. So you've seen Harry Potter, you know.
Totally. I am getting the image in my head right now.
So that news travels fast. It was a confession. He confessed the Jews did it. So I already told you in part 1 and part of this, everyone's looking for a fucking answer. That sounds great. We still are very easy to be like, great, oh good, we know who did it, let's get them, okay?
Yeah.
And it's sick and it's widespread, they're burned alive, fucking awful. Worse than anything you've heard from the plague. Now these fucks are also getting the plague at the same numbers the rest of us are, and they're being ushered by the dozens into mass graves, okay? The worst example, the city of Salzburg. Get this, Mary. Salzburg hears about this confession from this Jewish individual. They cap their own wells and execute over 900 Jews before anyone in the city of Salzburg even has a symptom of plague.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, subsequent waves of the plague, the Jews never are treated great, but that level of persecution pretty much was reserved for the first wave for the same reason every other inexplicable thing was, and it was because the Jews died in the same number as everybody. It didn't take long. And the Pope, to his credit, fucked up a lot of shit, but the Pope, to his credit, was like, stop that. And he made a missive. It was like, Jesus was a Jew, Jesus' mom, Mary's faith was Jewish, just stop this. Didn't do great. Still isn't doing great, but that was one of the first times in the world that... Yeah.
Holy
I have 2 more swoops of a roller coaster for you. First, we're going to go up.
Okay, good.
With art.
Yeah, please. Yay. Okay, yeah.
I have a tattoo on my arm.
Yes.
Of a skeletal mermaid who looks like she's having a great day.
She's living her best life. Well, she's a skeleton.
She's not the best. Her best life was a few years ago, but she's still doing great. And you may have seen the dance macabre of the skeletons that dance with each other, right? This came from the plague. 10% of the population's literate. 50% of the population is dead, which means we got a lot of feelings and we don't know how to like come out. And simultaneously, spontaneously around Europe, visual poetry, literature, and music is featuring the joyful dead.
Oh.
The joyful dancing macabre, the dance macabre. They come about in stories
Dare I
of...
say it? The grateful.
You may. That's the one, Mary! You know the cover of Black Sabbath's greatest hits, girl. Right? It is this feeling that through it all is like, death got the last laugh. We will dance together in the afterlife. Life, we are already dying. Let's make the most of it. I mean, cool, right? Absolutely love that stuff. We get stuff like Canterbury Tales, which is a collection of short stories that not only the stories themselves are plague stories. It is, the Canterbury Tales is a bunch of noble people who are trying to get out of town because the plagues, and while they're traveling to get away from the plague, they stop and have a storytelling contest. And so you just get all of these great, like 4 rooms, right? It's just so fucking cool. Okay, we talked about where the Yersinia pestis came from. These are my 2 favorite theories.
Oh, okay.
Because this bacteria is like all bacteria and viruses, they like evolve and they change and they like grow over time. So like maybe it wasn't so bad once, maybe it got worse. My favorite theory is from 1979.
Oh.
This guy was like, I'll tell you where it came from, girl. It's intergalactic germination. Dr. Chris Patel, who, by the way, is going to Mars in 2026. This guy is still around.
He's still around?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was like, we know a lot of organic biological life on Earth came from meteors and asteroids. We actually know that. And he's like, I'm telling you, it came. And then we're like, wait a fucking minute. We go back to the books of like those guys in Paris that were trying to crack the code. We're like, a lot of comets right now. Maybe that's it. And he's like, when a virus or something or a bacteria or something like that comes from outer space, we call that vertical transmission when it comes down, and then lateral transmission when it just sweeps across the globe. Some people say it is actually associated with earthquakes. At the time, there were a bunch of huge earthquakes that were felt and documented throughout Europe. And the idea was like, well, maybe something shook loose and vapor came from the ground. They were like, that's fucking dumb. And then in like 2016, they were like, well. And we're like, wait, no, what? Well, what? You mean it could have been that?
Really?
Yeah, we really don't know. We still don't know. And
That sounds like bunk.
I can't say. I think association is close.
I believe in the
but
meteor
don't
thing,
know.
though. That actually
The meteor
sounds...
thing.
That
Right?
sounds
That doesn't
about
sound
right.
like as nuts.
No, that sounds about right.
Right now, you and I have, as we survived COVID so far.
Knockety knock. Yep.
As of 2024, the year we're in right now, guess how many plague deaths there are in the United States every year.
What? Plague?
Yeah.
Plague? Like
bubonic
plague?
pneumonic, septicemia. Like, yep. Guess how many plague deaths
In the United States?
there are in the U.S. of A every year.
Every year? I'm sorry.
I know.
This is
It's
not
not comfy.
compute.
It's not comfy.
This is not compute.
It's not comfy.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think any. There can't be. Didn't we eradicate it? Didn't we?
2 to 20.
Of the plague?
The bubonic plague. The Yersinia pestis
Here in America?
in America.
That ain't right.
2 to 20 a year.
How? Where?
Right.
Where?
We don't know why she goes to sleep and we don't know why she wakes up. We do know the scientists went back because they were like, God, this is fucking weird. Because there was one other plague. Because we haven't had written language so long. And we haven't had groups of people that could die and travel that far. That it's not so long we can do this. But it turns out that in 500 AD in Rome, there was this Justinian plague. And they said the records that we have are like tens of thousands of people died, sometimes thousands a day. They woke up fine. They went to bed dead. What the fuck? Okay. And then, as we know, 1348 is when the one you and I have been talking about had its first wave. And then I told you in China in 1880, they were like, whoa, whoa! We don't know why it went to sleep from 500 to 1348. We don't know why it woke up again in 1880. We don't even really know why these 2 to 20. Now, we do know an infected flea work on some stuff. We don't know enough. And if that doesn't hurt your night's sleep tonight, I got one more.
Oh, God. And this is a Halloween story. Nighty-night, kids.
In 1995, that is recently,
1995.
there was a bacterium. The plague is a bacterium, right? COVID's a virus. So this is it's not Yersinia pestis, but a new bacterium that we've never existed before, was found in Madagascar. And no antibiotic on planet Earth can kill it. None of them, Mary. It is a naturally occurring mutant-free bacteria that appears to have evolved the scariest parts of both Salmonella and E. coli. So, buckle up.
Oh, God.
Sleep tight.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to give one more roll of the dice before we say goodbye.
What? That was it? Wait, I'm on the edge of my seat. There's still more.
I'm eager to hear. What do you want to know? Because if I know it, I'll tell you. God, no.
Wow. No, I just know. But I want to know I want to know the ones in the 220.
See, what I'd like to say is so 1666 is crazier. Poor London. London was in the midst of a fucking plague. And they had the fire. The London fire of 1666.
wow.
These fucks, right?
Wow.
And after the fire, the plague never came back. Kind of wiped out the plague. Kind of killed the fleas or did a thing. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But largely speaking, in the scale that we're talking about, after 1666, she went to sleep. Now, if you listen to Dr. Dorsey Armstrong's follow-up
Which I'm totally
lecture, which you have to, and she talks about what we've learned since COVID, and one of them is that my great story from Kaffa with Yanni Bag is more situational than causation. They don't think that actually is what spread at first. It just coincided with the spread because of what we know about the grain and how long these fucking fleas can live inside of textiles and all this kind of stuff, right? But geneticists and our ability now to look at the DNA of the Yersinia pestis is basically the virulence, how fast it kills us and how is just a little mutation. And the way I love it, the way that she explained it and how many generations, because rats, these things germinate. So it takes, after several generations, maybe that aspect of it goes away. And then 16 generations later, that mutation comes, that's one of the explanations. But she was as a historian, she's I'm not a biologist, but as a historian, here's what I kind of get from it. It's like when I read a text where there was a mistranslation. Because all of these scribes got the same thing and they all wrote their copy. But one wrote meal instead of mail, which one means hand and the other means God. So the phrase now says it was the hand of the church. The other said it was the God of the church. These are very different meanings.
Yeah.
And not only who reads that one, but which one gets passed on, which one burns, which one goes into the archive, which one...
Right.
And then what are the odds that intentionally or otherwise, the next person who transcribes it does it the right way? So now we have one version of the story with the myths and how do you figure out which was the correct and which was the intended? She goes, my understanding as a historian is that that's what happened biologically. In all of these little pieces of the virus, there's that one tiny, seemingly insignificant little twist that changes it actually fundamentally. And the only good news is that it's as easy for it to switch back. So, happy Halloween. No, I am so grateful. I am utterly starstruck by you.
Oh, stop.
You have to know that the work that you've done deeply influenced the way I think.
I'm a cog in the wheel. I'm a cog in the wheel, but I'm a grateful cog. And
the wheel rolls.
Yeah. Thank you.
Questions, anything before we say goodbye?
No, man, this was incredible. This was a great way to spend the morning. And I now am going to dive even further into it. Holy moly, there's so much.
Girl. And I will have, of course, in this episode's show notes and descriptions, I got links, man, to Dr. Dorsey Armstrong.
Yeah.
You should take her lecture. It's free. Go to get, if you don't have a library, you're like, oh, I wish I could, but I don't have a library card. Yeah, you do. Go to the library. You can go to the library online and you get your library card. Yeah. You know what I did? I'm such a nerd. I ran out. The library was like, too much. I didn't know there was a limit. Because each lecture is 30 minutes long. There's 24 of these things, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, yeah, man, more. I'm tapping my vein. I'm like, Dr. Armstrong. And the library was like, that's enough.
Yeah.
You only get 13 a month. And I was like, no, I'm not done. I haven't finished my lecture series. I'm going to finish. So then I got another library card under a different last name. So when you talk to your nerd friends and you say, okay, you're a nerd. Are you what? You took a great course at the library. Did you take the great course at the library so hard that the library told you to stop learning?
You found a cheat. That's awesome. Man, the library would turn you down. That's interesting. But yeah, no, I'm going to totally drill down on this further. You have, sated a lot of my questions and, but also have spurred more curiosity. I'm
so grateful, man.
But it was incredible. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Dang.
Thanks again to Mary Ramos, who just sat through 2 hardcore hours of Plague Talk before noon. Okay, that's a friend. And the next time that you're watching your favorite Tarantino movie or any of her other incredible credits, you raise a glass and you tell your friends how cool you are to have joined her on this dark journey. And Mary didn't leave empty-handed. Hell no. Listen, she, like all of my in-person guests, left with a branded HILF koozie. Oh, it features my personal HILF, George Washington, reclined with a Mona Lisa smile, a little bulge in his uniform that implies he's down to fuck. And it also features our tagline on the back, and it is there to keep your history hot and your beverage cold. If you want one of your own, you can have one and more, okay? The show notes and our social media links will take you to our online store where you can find everything from HILF stickers to bags and some dope t-shirts and pins. A lot of that stuff is under $5, and it makes you look cool, and it helps out the pod. So I know, right? As for us, listen, our next new episode drops the day before Thanksgiving, and it is the history of toasts with the hilarious hosts of the Art of Drinking podcast. You're going to listen to me drink 2 giant stiff drinks with Jules and Uncle Brad while dispensing the history of why we lift our glasses and say nice things to each other. It's so fun. You won't want to miss it. Until then, our theme song was composed and performed by Kat Perkins. A reminder that you can find my sources, links to the books, documentaries, and articles I reference in the summary of this episode, or by emailing us, hilfpodcast@gmail.com, or messaging us on social media @hilfpodcast. If you'd like to leave a little cash on the nightstand, I am so grateful. Find me on Patreon or buy me a coffee. Links to these and more are all in the show notes. This has been HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck with Dawn Brody. I'm Dawn Brody, reminding you that history is a party and everybody's coming.